Is your helicopter infrastructure accurate? Is it up to date? Are you relevant? Do drone and UAS pilots know where to look to find you so they can avoid you? If not, stay tuned. We're going to answer that and many more questions. So, why is this so important? Why does this matter? Well, there's a lot of people that are entering this airspace, and it's going to start getting more and more crowded. They are going to need to know where you're located. And needing to know where you're located means you're going to have to make sure that you do your due diligence, not only putting your base in, but all the heliports that you service to make it safer for everyone involved. So some of the basics we look at in what's out there currently, we look at the statistics. So in the statistics of the United States, and only the United States, if you look at the FAA's current record, what they call the Airport Master Record, in there they have approximately 19,669 landing areas. Out of that, 30%, or 5,918, are heliports. Now, when we get into this use case versus ownership discussion, it's the use case that's most important. And we get into the private versus the public. In the United States, there are only 58 public use heliports. Now, what's that break down to? That's less than 1% public use, 99.8% private use. Key point to remember, private use heliports in the United States, the FAA has absolutely no authority or jurisdiction over private use facilities. It's a double-edged sword though. They can't tell you how to do business, but if you have trouble, they can't help protect your airspace either. It's all on the owner, whoever owns that facility. Now, in looking at that use case, public use versus private use, public means anyone can come and land and take off. As long as you have a license, the appropriate certification, and you have the aircraft appropriately outfitted. Private use, you have to have the owner's permission. Every hospital in the United States of America's heliport is private use. Private use, again, the FAA has no authority, no oversight. It cannot help you protect your airspace. You may say, hey, we've got an instrument procedure. We have an approach and departure. Well, here's the thing. They still cannot protect your airspace. What that allows them to do is notify you when somebody decides to put in a building, a tower, a cell tower next door. It won't stop them. That's on you. So you have to make sure, number one, that you're in the system. Number two, protect your own airspace. Now, when we look at this under the microscope of medical use, how many of those nearly 6,000 heliports are medical use? Well, in the database currently, it says 2,574 are medical use. But now a dose of reality. Is that true? Is that accurate? Well, in 2019, NASA published a report saying that there are at least upwards of 2,000 hospital heliports that are not accounted for in the United States. Almost half of all the hospital heliports that are out there are unaccounted for. That's quite a bit. So in that space, there's a lot that can be done to rectify that from the point of the helicopter air medical operators. Now, we did a study in Ohio with the U.S. Helicopter Safety Team. If you've never looked at their website, I've got that up there, ushst.org. Phenomenal group of people that I work with. They have a tremendous amount of good information from the safety side. Highly recommend you go to their website. But when looking at Ohio, we downloaded every site known to man and known to the FAA. 665 total sites. We were able to find 537. Out of that 665, there was 128 that we couldn't identify. Either they were so far away or they were so screwed up that we could not find them. Now, in the unknown, unlisted area, we found 44. Every single one was a hospital. It's 44 sites that aren't in the system in operation today. One, or actually two, happen to be air medical bases, medical use site, heliports that aren't in the system. We also looked at Wisconsin. We found 78 sites, 78 heliports at hospitals. We also found 42 that are not in the system, that are there, they're in operation, but they're not in the system. Now, one of the things that we look at is what's called a 5010 form. The FAA publishes this form. All it is a form. It pulls its data from the FAA Airport Master Record and just puts it in a one-page readable document. In this case, we're looking at a heliport in the state of Indiana. The heliport's identifiers 5IN1, or Indian November. On the left's the full form. On the right, we've blown up the area here in the yellow so that you can see what we're looking at specifically is the latitude and longitude. I will tell you that this has since been corrected based on the observations we made. Now, there's a latitude and longitude that it says this location's at, but when we plot that on the map, we found over here is where it said it was. This area here, and you see this is where it plots out to on top of this building. When actuality, it's over here, 3.2 miles away is where the heliport's actually at. So this heliport's in the system, but it's not represented correctly with the latitude and longitude. Again, it's been corrected and it's now where it's supposed to be. But there are literally hundreds of these heliports, and 3.2 is not that far. And I'm going to show you one that's worse. Now, Conseco Helipad in Indianapolis, all right, it's a heliport. It's not in the system, but it has an identifier. It's a really interesting thing that happened here. The active heliport's been there for over 20 years. The hospital that operates in and out of here doesn't own it. It's a third party. And it's not owned by the helicopter air ambulance provider either. However, the HA provider established an instrument approach departure procedure at this location over 3 years ago, but it's still not in the master record. So if I searched for a heliport here, it wouldn't show up. And I wouldn't know that it had a heliport, and I wouldn't know that it had this approach departure procedure. And this instrument procedure gets you down to 314 feet above surface. If you look right here under the visibility and the DA. DA is 314, visibility is 3/4. So that's extremely important when we look at not being in the system. I don't know this exists. I would never know this exists because, again, this is a special instrument procedure. It's not a published instrument procedure. So when you look on the normal navigational systems and the published information, it'll say, there's nothing here. There's no instrument published procedure. That's true. It's not published. Now, when we look at how bad can bad get, well, this is an example. Now, this is not a hospital heliport. This is a heliport, though. It's a TV station in Nashville, Tennessee. On the right over here, you'll see, hey, that's where the heliport's actually at, is right here, shows in green. That's where it physically is. However, the information in the Airport Master Record says it's here in this grove of trees. Well, how far is that? Well, in this case, it's 48.6 nautical miles in the wrong direction. And I can tell you that the record is from 1979 and just checked it yesterday and it's still the same. So if you were a drone pilot and you were in this area over here in Nashville trying to make sure that you were doing everything correctly, you would look up the information and it wouldn't show up here. You would think that there was no heliport, and you would think that you wouldn't have to worry about traffic or any aircraft in this vicinity, when in actuality, you might be right off the approach end. So this is one of those things we look at, not only the accountability, but the accuracy of the information. Another term that some of you may already have heard, some of you this may be the first time you hear this, is PELA, P-E-L-A. So we talk about heliports in the United States, heliports in the system or not in the system. What's a PILA? Well, a PILA is a pre-designated emergency landing area. Not a scene, it's not something you go to and leave and that's it. A PILA is someplace that you as the helicopter air ambulance provider have set down with the first responder and looked at ahead of time and pre-designated that. So it's in position, it's in play. If there's an emergency in that area, this is your rendezvous point. Now, that's what a PILA is. What a PILA is not. It's not accounted for, it's not tracked, it's not inspected by the FAA or most state departments of transportation, if any state departments. It's something that a helicopter provider has in-house. First responders may or may not track this as well. Now, how many PILAs exist in the United States? No one really knows for sure. Based on our best estimation, there's at least 4,000 to 6,000 of these throughout the US. Could be more. Accountability has been sketchy at best because the FAA doesn't track these, the Department of Transportation does not track these. There's only one organization out there that even tracks a PILA in any way, shape, or form, and that is the group called LZ Control. A lot of you may have used this. It's a software program that's online, also has a handheld phone app. LZ Control is the only place I've ever found that ever tracked PILAs. They also track bases, heliports, bases at airports, and hospital information. We'll get into that after a bit. But for PILAs, this is the only place you're probably going to find them. Now, if you look east of the Mississippi, there seem to be a whole lot more than west of the Mississippi. It's not that they're more, they're just accounted for. They're there, we just haven't seen them put into the system. So for all of those out there that are west of the Mississippi and you're using PILAs, I advise you to put those in this system so there's someplace that we can reference. Again, this is for first responders and helicopter air ambulance providers specifically. The FAA is interested in this, but they're not tracking them. Now, when we look at what we have versus what we may have, we know that there's 2,574 air medical operations that we consider heliports, or medical use, if you will. But what is really out there? So what's the potential? That's what we know about. There's a potential if you put the PILAs and those other 2,000 that we don't know where they're at or they exist, we could have over 10,574 facilities, and we're only capturing 2,574. From an infrastructure standpoint, you want to protect your infrastructure and you want to make sure everybody else knows about your infrastructure. We're not doing a very good job in this space. And there's a concern on some people's part. They're afraid that if they go to the FAA and say, hey, we're not in the system, we want to be in the system, that the FAA will make them fix all the discrepancies associated with your heliport. Here's the dirty little secret. The FAA has no authority whatsoever to make you do anything when it comes to fixing something on a heliport that doesn't meet their standard. Because if you look on page 1 of the Heliport Design Guide, it says, for private use, these are recommendations only. Now, the state DOT, local municipality, they may be able to do some enforcement action, but not the FAA. And it's the FAA who actually tracks the information. So highly advise you to get your information in the system and make sure it's accurate. So what's the risk? So you don't do any of this. Your majority of your heliports aren't in the system. This is a small eye chart for you, if you will, but these are a short list of 18 areas that pull information from that FAA database. If it's wrong in the FAA database, or if it's non-existent in these 18. And again, this is a short list. There's literally 100 different planning sites and additional sites that pull that information on these heliports and publish it. Also, GPS in your aircraft pull the information from the FAA's Airport Master Record. If it's wrong in that record, it's wrong everywhere. Now, in looking at the next level of risk, we talk about drone and UAS operations. The app that we have online today is the FAA's Before You Fly application. It's for your cell phone. It allows you to put yourself in a geolocated area, identify where you're at by GPS, and then identify airspace around you. In the illustration here, we have the little helicopter symbol in the left-hand corner here. And you see that reproduced here. Well, what that is a heliport. So in this illustration, we have the helicopter represents the heliport and its location by GPS. You can see it superimposed. This is a hospital campus representing a campus here in Indiana. That's Parkview Medical Center. Now, you notice it says clear because there's no restrictions for UAS operators and drone operators to operate next to heliports. No matter what you said, it's clear to them. However, if you look over here, the information is actually listed. It's private use, it's a regional medical center, and if this is where I'm at as a drone operator, it shows me where I'm at in relationship to that heliport. Now, in this case, we look at two locations that are within 1 mile of each other, just outside of Indianapolis, Indiana. Site A over here basically is a hospital heliport right there. Site B is another hospital heliport, totally separate. Both of these aren't in the system. You can see here's a picture of the heliport down here with the latitude and longitude. Here's a picture of the other one with the latitude and longitude. Both operational, been there for at least 5 years. However, they're not in the system. And as such, you notice that in here where A and B is at, no helicopter showing that there's a heliport in that space. And again, it just says clear, that's all. So if I were to set up operations as a drone pilot in this area, I would not know that those are in existence whatsoever. No record equals no ID equals no visibility. That's what we have today. Now we're looking into the future. So here's something I want you to really pay close attention to. This represents a testing area in Ohio. It's between Columbus, Ohio, up towards Marysville, Ohio, along Corridor 33 or Highway 33. It's designed for the testing of autonomous vehicles, both ground and air. Now think about this, autonomous vehicles, no pilot on board, flying at least 30 miles beyond line of sight, either remotely or autonomously completely. No pilot involved at all. Along this route, if you look, section 1, 2, and 3, area 1 represents a Honda facility or a factory where there's 2 heliports that are reported in the system that we can't find. So they were put in, they've either been moved or they've been relocated to someplace else that we don't know, or they're gone completely. We have no idea, we can't find them. Site 2 is actually a heliport that supports an EMS base. It's not a hospital, but it's an EMS base. It's a 24/7 operation, flying an EC-135 in and out of there on a regular basis. It's not in the system. I wouldn't know it existed unless I knew where it was. Number 3 is an actual hospital, and if you look at number 3, it's right on the edge of that corridor. So there's 3 locations along this autonomous testing facility. And I think that's one of the key things we look at looking into the future are all the operations in the next couple of years, and we're talking in the next 2, we're going to start seeing autonomous operations beyond line of sight, upwards of 50, 60 miles of unmanned aircraft flying to and from. And if they don't have a database that's accurate and the data is got good, solid integrity, they won't know where you're at. That means you're going to be at risk. The people on the ground are going to be at risk, and the other people flying the aircraft that are autonomous, those vehicles will be at risk as well. So that's what the problem is. How do we fix that? How do I give you the measures to prevent that? First, you have to know where to look. So what I'm going to teach you now is, where do you look for the data? How do you find the data? How do you update your data? And if you don't find and can't find where you're located in the system, how do I deal with that if I don't exist? And then who can help you in this space? So now let's get into where to find this information. So I'm going to show you several different websites that you can go to help find information, whether it exists, doesn't exist, what the accuracy of that information is. And the links will all be embedded in the PowerPoint presentation for later, but I've also have it here on the screen in case you want to use that. So in looking at this, we'll go to the site. This is the site for the FAA Airport Data and Contact Information. It's a searchable site, so I can look at the entire United States. I can break it down by state, county, city, facility. So I'm just going to select what I know really well, which is the state of Indiana, and I'm going to look at the county. So for me, it would be Allen County. I'm going to type that in and go down to Allen County, highlight that. Now I can select all facilities, public, private. I'm going to go ahead and leave it at all because I'm going to show you the difference between airports and heliports. And then Part 139 certification, that's generally for public use facilities, not private, but I'm going to leave that all. And I'm going to submit that. And the key here is understand that this does not give you a picture or a data set. It actually gives you something to download. There's 4 different sites. So you have the airport facility data, the airport runway data, the airport remarks data, and the airport schedule data. So if you have one heliport or one airport, you'll have information in each one of those data sets. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on this one. It's going to come down here and ask me to open that. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It comes out as a DAT file. I'm going to expand this so it's easier for you to read. Let's do the whole thing, format, and width. So if we look in here, you can see that here's all the heliports and airports in Allen County. There's 22. This is the date that we downloaded this data set. So if we look at a specific heliport, we'll just get a hospital here. Let's look at DuPont Hospital. So as we go across, you look at the information. DuPont Hospital, private ownership, private use. There's the address, the phone number. There's the individual that's listed as the manager or point of contact. Latitudes and longitudes, some sundry information as far as the distance from the center of the business district, what charts you can find it on, what the weather briefing systems are. The one item that I would point to specifically is when was it activated? Here we see the activation date, July 1, 2003. Now, has it been in operation before that? May have been, but this is when it was actually entered into the FAA database. And this is the airspace determination. You can have no objection, you can have conditional, or you can have objectionable. In this case, it's conditional. So those are some of the pieces of information that you'll find in that data, but this is where I would start and look for the information for my specific heliports. Close that out. And then the second one is what's called Airport IQ 5010. So that is the web address here. I'll take you directly to that site. So this has a place where you can put in a location identifier, city. So if I put in Fort Wayne, submit, it'll come up, there's DuPont Hospital, and it lists it out. So I can click on DuPont Hospital, and we have the same information, and it lists out. Now, the one thing that's different between this site and the last site is the fact if you look up in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little print icon. The print icon, if I click on it, it'll actually give me a copy of what it would look like on that Form 5010. So it's pulling the data from the Airport Master Record and putting it in this format. And here's all the information that we would have on that particular location. And one of the things I'll point to that's important is this information down here in what's called the remarks section. This is something that you can add to. This is the remarks for the location. So if you have a special radio frequency you want people to use, or if you have a specific phone number you want people to alert you with, or if there's some specific information on operations. Also, if this is a pub or a private permission required facility, is there any restrictions? Can everybody land here, or do you have to have a letter of agreement? Can you be a twin engine or a single engine? Do you have to go through training? This is a really good place to list that, is in the remarks section. Now the next area that we want to look at is AirNav. AirNav is one of my favorite places to go just to find information. And it has something that the other ones don't have, which is an advanced search feature for latitude and longitude. So in looking at AirNav, you see the main page, go to airports. Then down here you'll see where it says advanced search. Click on advanced search. Here I can put a latitude and longitude in. So I'm going to go ahead and look up this particular location. So this is a Cincinnati Children's Hospital. I've already marked it in Google Earth. I'm going to click on properties and it's going to give me latitude and longitude. So I'm going to copy the latitude and longitude without any spaces or the degree symbol there. Then we're going to go ahead and paste that into the search box. Pick up my longitude. Same thing, don't pick up the negative sign or the degree sign. And then I'm going to go ahead and paste that. Now I'm going to go ahead and search for everything that's in here. So airports, balloon ports, glider ports, heliports, seaplane base, ultralight flight parks, public, private, military. And I'm going to narrow it to 10 miles. It's very rare, but every once in a while, a heliport may be listed as an airport. So I search everything. So I hit search, and these are all the heliports and airports within 10 miles of that latitude and longitude, all listed out. Gives me what their name is, where they're at, the distance and direction. Now, this could be Cincinnati's Children's, but I don't think it is. University Hospital. I can copy this in this format, copy this, come back over here to Google, I'll close this out, go to the search bar and just paste that latitude and longitude and see where it takes you. So in this case, it's actually showing me another heliport, a different heliport, which is right here. So what that tells me is that this heliport's in the system, but the Cincinnati Children's Hospital heliport is not in the system. Does not have a 5010. There's no airport master record data on that particular heliport. So that's one way of finding out if you're in the system or not in the system. Now, the next area I'm going to look at is called SkyVector. SkyVector is another website. SkyVector, there's the web address, is really nice that it gives you a really good map to work with, but it also provides you with information on whether the location that you're looking at is got a conditional, non-objectionable, or objectionable airspace determination. So in looking at this, I'm going to go to another site. So this is, I'm going to say this is an unknown site. So we're going to go through the exercise of finding this. So here's a heliport. I don't know whose it is. I don't know exactly what it is. So I've got the information here. I'm going to go ahead and find the properties. I'm going to look this up. Copy and paste, just what we did the last time. I'm going to put that into AirNav. I'm going to go back here and we're going to change this. And we're going to go back and pick up the longitude. Copy that. Now I'm going to paste that. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to search here. All right, now over here where it says where, you'll notice that it has a dash. That means it's pretty much identical in latitude and longitude. So I'm going to click on that. Henry County Hospital, Napoleon. So OH, Oscar Hotel 06. I'm now going to go to SkyVector, and then I'm going to go to airports. I'm going to type that in. So Oscar Hotel 06, and hit search. And there you go. So Oscar Hotel 06, Henry County Hospital. The one thing that I will point out is the airspace analysis actually shows up in this one where it doesn't show up in AirNav. In this case, and this goes to your risk analysis profile, is this heliport was deemed unsafe by the FAA. It's got an objectionable airspace determination. And in looking at all the heliports in the United States, there's 40 that have objectionable airspace determinations. The FAA came in, did their inspection, and said it was unsafe. But there's nothing the FAA can do to prevent this from being utilized. It's the state that could prevent this, or the local municipality. The FAA can't. They have no authority to do so. So the only thing they can do is actually show this as objectionable. And you look here in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see where it lists out objectionable on the sectional chart. That's what that means. Now, this is something very important when you're looking at infrastructure that you utilize. Are you including that in your risk analysis profile? Very, very important. The next site we're going to look at, FAA ADIP, or ADIP, Airport Data and Information Porthole. Again, here's the web address down here. Go to the web address, ADIP. So here's the page that you're going to wind up on with that web address. Now, it's got different things down here that you need to look at. You need to register. Now, the My Access, that's primarily for the FAA. The public login, that's where we go to. So if I go to public login, my address, put in my password, and log in, I now have access to the site. Now, this site is important because of all the sites we look for information, ADIP was designed and funded and published this year by the FAA for a location where you can actually change your information. Now, you can't change everything because certain things require validation from the FAA and DOT, but there are items in here that you can change. Now, in that space, I would point you to the help online, and it has a list of all the different things. So if we go through here, we look at the support desk user's guide, facility documentation. This will show you what it is you can do in this system and how to do it. Probably could spend a couple hours going through and give you a tutorial on how to use this system, but it's a brand new system, just came out. It's called ADIP, ADIP, and it's an FAA system for you, the owner or the user of a site, to actually update your information. And that's one of those things that has just been fielded. Again, I could spend a lot of time on this. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me on that. LZ Control, some of you have already seen this probably. Some of you have heard of this site, use it, may even be signed up for it. It's a great site, it's third-party, free access. It's got a web-based system. It's also got a downloadable app on the phone. But LZ Control is a different system than what the FAA is. The FAA system is designed for the owner to report data back. And in some cases, that may be several years. LZ Control is designed for the user. So the user can update the information, multiple users updating the information on a regular basis, daily in some cases, makes the information more accurate and up to date so that when you log in, you can find information that's more specific to this location. So in looking at LZ Control, this is what you would see on the website. All the different dots with numbers are the numbers of landing zones in that area. Now, you can toggle on and off several different items. You have the weather. I can toggle on and off all these different items as far as location. But if I wanted to zoom in, you can either just double click, zoom into a particular area, or I can click on the site and it'll take me to that. In the upper left-hand corner, we have map and terrain or satellite. Turn the satellite on. You see that in this case, there are two separate heliports, both on the same campus. So we've actually accounted for two heliports. And it's important when you're putting information in here to make sure you're not duplicating information. Always look around and make sure you're not putting in something that's already in existence. The other thing is when you go on here, you can click on the actual H and it'll bring up the basics and it'll give you the information for that site. You can go to view details and it's more in-depth information. And you can go through here. The one thing that LZ Control does that no other organization does is track the medical piece. What type of facility is this? What kind of trauma level can they handle? Burn, pediatric, neuro, all those things. And then also the nearby areas as well, plus additional contact information, radio frequencies, and also gives you who has updated the information. And if you're signed in as a member, you can actually email them and confirm or ask that there's a change or update. You can also, as a a member, if you've signed in and given your email, you can go in and edit. Now, one thing I would point you to in this space, it's very important and really kind of cool, a lot of people don't know about, is in this page, I can actually pick up and move the pinpoint, the balloon, and I can drop it exactly in the center of where the landing area is. The FAA does not have this. You can do this and actually submit it, and it will update the latitude and longitude down here anytime you do that. So anytime you put information in LZ control, make sure that you center the pin at the exact spot. Also check to make sure you're not duplicating information that somebody else has already entered. If something's changed, by all means, add the information, and you might even email the person that added the information in the first place to make sure they're aware of it. So, one other thing that LZ control allows you to do is look at something that we talked about earlier, the PILA, also known as a scene. So if you see an S, we're going to change that probably soon to a P. Click on scene, it'll give you what that information is. This is a pre-designated emergency landing site. You can view the details for the scene, shows you where the landing zone's at. Again, remember to drop the balloon on the center of the LZ, but then it's got additional information from first responders, hazards, and such like that for the PILA. LZ control is the only place that actually tracks these at all. Nobody else tracks these. So now that we've shown you what the information is, where to find it, how to gather the information to check if it's accurate or if it's even on file, now you say, hey, I need some help. Well, here's the group that can help you in your area. So the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, has a FSDO, Flight Standards District Office. Every area is broken up, and the FSDO has a specific geographical area that they have oversight. So here's the web address you can go to and find what FSDO has oversight for your area. And all you have to do is put in what state you're in. So for the state of Indiana, hit go. And this gives me information. It's like, where's the office located and service area. So am I in their service area? So if I'm down in this blue shaded area, they have oversight. If I'm up here somewhere, somebody else has oversight. I need to find who that is. It may be Chicago, it may be somebody else. Then I have contact information. They also have a website that's their own, so you can click on the website and all information for that particular FSDO can be found on this. Some of it's in PDF, some of it's searchable. They'll have a list of all the people that work there, and they'll have their phone numbers and email addresses. So if you're looking for help, this is where you would go to get help for the FAA. The FAA can help you if, say, you need to update information that you're not allowed to. Number two is, say you don't have your heliport or a heliport in the system. The FAA can help you with the paperwork. What you're going to do is fill out a 7480 FAA form to submit to the FAA and the DOT to get your heliport in the system so that you are recognizable. Now, the last group, every state has a Department of Transportation in it, and every Department of Transportation has an aeronautics division or aviation section. The one group that all these people belong to is called NASAO. NASAO stands for the National Association of State Aviation Officials, and they have a website. So if you go to their website and look up their members, this is their site for their members, each state has their own information. So we scroll down here to the big state of Indiana. There's the individual who's in charge of the aviation office. Then they have a website. I can go to that website. This is a state government website for Indiana, and it's for aviation. And all the information for that particular state is here, to include forms that you may need to fill out to get your information on your heliports in the state system as well as the federal system. So the state DOT has an aviation division whose job it is to help you get this information in the system and to help them keep it up to date. So things you should be doing. So we know where to look, we know what to look for, we know where to ask for help. So check all the heliports you service, number one. Check Are they in the system? Do they exist? Check their accuracy. Is the latitude and longitude correct? Is it plus or minus about 20 feet, 25 feet versus 4 miles, 50 miles? Update inaccurate information on the ADIP system where you can. File with the FAA and DOT for missing heliports. And designate someone at your base or at your operation, whether it be a pilot, be it a medical crew member, be it in the operational control center, somebody that has responsibility to check the infrastructure. Evaluate infrastructure on an annual basis. You should go back and make sure that the accuracy of the information is correct. People come and people go, phone numbers change, addresses change. Sometimes entire hospitals move and everybody forgets about the heliport. Make sure you get that changed too. Add infrastructure to your risk management program. If a heliport doesn't exist, that means that the drone and UAS community don't know it's there. That's an increased risk. If the information in the database is incorrect and it shows it 40 miles off, that also is a risk. If it has an objectionable airspace study and the FAA has deemed it unsafe, but you're using it anyway, you probably want to put that in your risk management profile and figure out ways from an operational standpoint to increase your safety and reduce your risk. Now, the future is coming and it's coming really, really fast. So we're looking at this electric vertical takeoff and lift industry coming down the pike. It's going to change the way we do business. But before this gets here, the UAS and drone market is going to be here even sooner. So make sure that you get out there and you look at your infrastructure, make sure it's in the system and make sure it's accurate. Because if they don't know where it's at, they won't know to look for you, avoid you, and communicate with you, especially those that are unmanned, autonomous vehicles. And we're seeing more and more of that, and it's going to be an everyday occurrence in the very near future.